Somebody said we didn't need a quorum for a workshop.
I'm
But
tired.
we got a quorum, so I'll just make it. Okay, the time is now 6:33 p.m. on Monday, February 6th. I call this workshop to order. I declare we have a quorum of the board members present. And Ms. Diosas, can you lead us in the pledges? And Ms. Butler, could you give the invocation today? Thank you.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Dear Heavenly Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you that you brought us here today and to handle the business of the district. We thank you for bringing our guest here safely, and we pray, Father, that you would just guide us for decisions that have to be made, not tonight, but in the sessions to come, Father God. And we just thank you for your new mercies today. Let them be upon each and every one of us, over our board, over our admin, over our district. We give you all the glory and all the honor and all the praise in Jesus' almighty name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Butler and Ms. Diosas. First thing is public testimony.
It's here.
Oh, you did show up. Oh, we thought you were going to be. I thought
about you?
David is not here.
You bet. You don't want to miss it.
David,
Okay.
Olivia does it so much better.
Good deal. Good deal.
Okay, so the first thing is public testimony. We have nobody present. Next thing is on the agenda is the presentation by Mr. Chase Carlaws of Carlaws Insurance concerning property liability and automobile insurance. Mr. Carlaw. Button on?
How about now? There we go. Had it on mute. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. I've been asked by administration to just provide an update on where we stand on the renewal. I feel like we were just here a few months ago, but it's been almost a year now. So we're back to talk about the property and casualty insurance. I did provide a packet this evening, and I'd like to draw your attention to this PowerPoint presentation that's on the black pages. There's a few items in here that I'll go through, and then we can discuss what the options are and what we're recommending this year. The first page is a historic timeline of the natural disasters we've seen. We talked about this last year, how the global insurance market had been affected from 2017 until present date. That has not slowed down. As we can see here, there's, these are the items that we talk about, but just as a refresher, if we looked at 40 years of property insurance, it's very cyclical. It's what we talked about last year, and the peaks and valleys are driven by natural disasters. So up and from 2005 till 2007, we had some activity. 2017, we had some activity, but not to the unprecedented levels that we're seeing over the past 6 to 7 years. And when we refer to that period, we refer to that as what we would call the soft insurance market. I mean, there was a lot of insurance companies out there willing to provide insurance. The rates were coming down, the deductibles were coming down. It was just a favorable environment for the consumer. 2017 happened. We all know what happened then. By 2019 is when we started seeing our rates start escalating. Deductibles started going up. Carriers started pulling out of the market, and that has not slowed down. That has just amplified over the last, really drastically over the last 2 years. 2022 seemed to be what we would consider favorable from a tropical standpoint to the United States. However, if you flip to the next page, there is a picture here that that NOAA publishes every year. This one's from 2022. Just a synopsis: there was 18 $1 billion plus storms that again affected the United States alone. A little shocking to me whenever I saw the report come out last month, but because again we kind of think hurricanes, and we didn't really have too much until Ian decided to hit Florida late in the hurricane season. But again, there was quite a few activity from a climate standpoint that did affect the United States, which ultimately does in turn affect our insurance market. The next page does outline some of that. The storms did, unfortunately kill nearly 500 people. The report did indicate that On an annual basis, before 2017, we were averaging about 8 of these events per year, and over the last 6-7 years, we've been averaging 18 of these events per year. So really kind of reiterates the first diagram that did show what those events are. On top of that, we went through a pandemic, the supply and demand issues, the inflation issues that we're seeing globally right now. Just a handful of those items are still affecting the market. So how is it affecting the market? We're still losing insurance carriers that were available 10 years ago. Goes back to the simple economics principle of supply and demand. We've got less supply and the amount of insurance is available for consumers, and the demand's higher than it ever has been for insurance. So what's that going to do? That's going to drive the price up. So it also leaves us with less options to consider, and that's what we're here tonight to basically discuss. The next page is just a strategy. I did want to reiterate our strategy and our process to the board. We have been blessed to handle about 58 school districts in South Texas. And so back in late November, early December, we tried to get out to meet with administrators to kind of fill them on what we thought was coming. By no means did we think we were going to see what we saw or what we're seeing right now, but we knew it was going to be bad. We just didn't know it was going to be as bad as it was. But we had those talks. We talked about the processes, the timeline. Our timeline was effectively to meet with everybody, get their information, make sure our schedules of values, all our building and contents were accurate, and have those back out into the markets before everybody went on Christmas break, with the intentions of being able to come in when everybody got back from Christmas break and having renewal quotes on the table for boards to consider in the January and maybe to the February board meeting should they push it to that. That was delayed, which is quite honestly why we're sitting here today. It was delayed in the fact that the markets were scrambling to renew their reinsurance. So the insurance companies that we buy from, they go out and buy insurance too on such as a risk such as this. They don't just self-insure on this. All of those reinsurance contracts were set to renew on January 1st, and they were delayed. So there are still some carriers that we are reading about and hearing about that have not fulfilled their entire reinsurance portfolios yet. One of them being one of the carriers that y'all are with. They were only able to get 70% of what they needed just to renew the insurance that they had from the prior years. So they're still working on that. They're non-renewing accounts to try to get the riskier stuff off their books of business so that they can provide, insurance for what they consider the less risky of the risks. So that was our timeline. Again, it was pushed back. One of the carriers that y'all are with, Amherst, they've gone out across the United States and said, do not ask us for any renewal quotes prior to 15 days prior to expiration. Went back to them and said, well, that doesn't really work in the public entity world because we have to meet with administrators and we have 3 or 4 days to get it on an agenda, and then it has to go to board approval, and 2 weeks is just not going to work. I mean, we can't show up to boards and ask them to approve these types of deals 2 or 3 days before the insurance renews. It's just not feasible. So they have worked off of board dates for us on our schools, which has been a little bit better, but it did delay it a little bit. We did go out to, there's a list in here, approximately 28 different insurance companies, and there's the responses that everybody can read through there later. At the end of the day, our job is to go out to the entire global market, make sure we leave no rock unturned, and bring the best product at the best price to the district. And so that's what we did this year, just like we do every year. And those were the markets that were approached. Again, if we would have looked at this list 7 years ago, there may have been 40 of them on there. But there's not 40 out there willing to write these types of policies today. So the third option on there is TWIA. We have found on 1 or 2 districts that it has been more cost effective to write a portion of the policy with the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association. That turned out not to be the case for Aransas Pass, but we did explore that option as well. One of the reasons being that the rates that are dictated by the open market is still more cost effective than what we found the TWIA rates to be. The other issue we have on that is TWIA will only insure what I would call real property buildings. They're not going to provide insurance on light poles and fencing and dugouts and bleachers and stuff of that nature. So when you have to pair that with an open market quote on the windstorm for that plus the TWIA, it just didn't make financial sense for Aransas Pass. So we did explore that though. The next page brings us to really what we're here to talk about tonight is what option that the board does want to consider. And I know we're not taking action tonight, but I thought it was a good opportunity that we can have an open dialogue to answer the questions of how these options would work, what they mean to the district, how the deductibles work, et cetera. The far left column is clearly where we currently are, the current terms of the policies that we purchased last year. As a refresher, last year we didn't go out and buy the full limits, meaning we didn't go out and buy $92 million of coverage. We ended up purchasing the $35 million loss limit. And that's what we've quoted again this year, with the two middle options being the far right option to consider purchasing $25 million, less than we bought last year. Again, I'm not recommending that, but at the end of the day, our job is to bring you the options, and you consider what you find financially feasible for the district to purchase. If you look at the deductible structure, which is the top line item, all of the options do include the $100,000 AOP. Again, that references all other perils, so everything other than wind, hail, and flood. Really, what we reference there is major fires. So we'd have a $100,000 deductible still on that. The wind and hail, which is everything other than a named storm, is going to be going from $250,000 to a 1% with a minimum of $250,000. And then the options that we would be considering tonight is whether or not the district wants to remain at a 3% named storm deductible or increase that to a 5%. The second line there is your total insured values. So part of the program that we represent every year, they do a property valuation of all the district's assets to figure out whether or not we're still within what it costs to replace the buildings and the contents. Did that again this year. So the values did go from $92 million to $105 million. And that represented about 4% valuation increase. That is part of that dollar increase that you're seeing there. The deductible, back to the named storm percentage deductible of 3%. Worst case scenario, 3% of $105,000 would be $3.1 million deductible that the district would have. If we looked at the 5, we're talking closer to a $5.2 million deductible. And I just wanted to include those numbers in there so everybody understands how those percentages would work. Again, that's a worst case scenario. That means we had a storm come through and we have damage to every single building. The way the deductible works, it is not a percentage of the amount of damage you had, but it's a percentage of the value of the building that we have on the schedule. So again, I like to take worst case scenario. If we have a storm come through, y'all are a smaller district, it's very feasible that we would have damage to every single building. We're not going to have a total like we discussed last year of every single building, but it is very feasible. Like we saw in Harvey, I think we had pretty much every building touched by that storm. Again, we're very isolated here. It's a smaller district, so it's very feasible, like we saw in Harvey, that would occur.
So you're saying we have to pay 5% per building of the deductible?
If you
Is that
had
what I'm
every
understanding?
building touched,
Any
yes.
building that's damaged, we have to pay 5%
Yeah,
of it
so
if we
y'all's-
go with that?
It's really the way it reads is, let's see here, it's 5% per occurrence per location. So
It's per building.
for instance, if we had a storm that just touched the high school location, they're going to take the values of all the buildings that are scheduled at that location and apply 5% to that valuation, and that's what your deductible would be. If it was one building at the high school or all the buildings, it's 5% of the entire valuations at that location.
Okay, well, that's kind of hard to figure out then, isn't it?
Well, not really, because they're going to take the schedule and they're going to look at it, and there is a copy of the schedule in the last 2 pages, and they're going to look at the schedule and go, okay, at the high school we have, and that's the first line item, we've got 31 million of values there. We've got a high school weight room of 751. We've got a field house of 1.7. Basically, those set of buildings is what they'd apply the 5% to. Whether we
Okay,
had
so am
damage
I
to every building or the
understanding
entire.
this 5 million is through the whole district?
That's through the 105 million. If we had damage to every single building, we have
Your
damage on
hardest
every
and largest
location,
deductible.
it'd be 5.2 million.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And I'd like to just remind you, it's not, the way the deductible works, it's not like we have to write the insurance company a $5.2 million check, right? So they're going to come out and say, okay, you got $30 million of damage, less 5.2 million, your deductible, and here's your check for
Like we do for our
2
homes.
million or 24 million, whatever the math is. Yeah, it's not something we have to come out of pocket for. It's just then we have to come out of pocket for the additional repairs that we weren't compensated for that deductible section.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So again, the next line is your loss limits. The only thing being different, the far right column would be a $25 million loss limit versus the 35 we purchased. The pricing is there for the property insurance on the next line. The PCAT casualty portion, again, that's y'all's liability coverages for your school buses, general liability, board liability, cyber liability, et cetera. We are in a multi-year agreement with PCAT there, so there was a slight rate increase there, but the increase you're really seeing is for any additions that we may have added as far as ADA. It's rated off ADA or number of vehicles, buses, et cetera, stuff like that. Again, very small percentage of the overall premium, so not really a discussion point there. That's really it. The next two pages, like I said, are a copy of the property schedule. Just I know there may have been some questions on which buildings and how much they're valued at, so I did put that in there as well. But really, I'm here just to answer any questions about how those deductibles would work, what your thoughts are on how the district feels about the 3% versus the 5%, or whether or not you would consider the 25 million loss limit.
The last line is difference, is that what that said? That yellow is a
Yeah,
little
I'm
hard
sorry,
for me
that's
to
a little
read.
bit difficult. That's the difference in the premium increase versus what you paid last year.
Oh, compared to last
Yeah,
year.
total
Okay.
premium. So last year paid $1,064,000. If you went with option one, it'd be an increase of, call it $650,000.
Okay.
Did I miss anything?
Oh, you're doing good.
The two
This-
middle ones
This white
is-
page is probably easier to see.
Yeah,
There
I
is an
can't read-
options
I'm
page in there
having a
on the
hard
white
time seeing
page.
the
Yeah,
yellow.
sorry. Don't look at that one. Look at the other
Oh,
page
is
in
it
there.
in here too?
There's another
Stuff?
one, and it's all on white paper.
Okay.
That might be easier to read.
Oh, much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot that was in there.
And I can see option one, okay.
Refresh our memory, what was our loss limit when we went through Harvey?
We did not have one.
We didn't have one.
So
Okay.
we insured, yeah. So back then, I think, if I recall, Cheryl, you might remind me, we had about 68 to 70 million of values at that point. Does that sound about right? Or 80, somewhere around there. And so at that time, we were in that soft market, and
Oh, yes.
remember,
Okay.
it had gotten so soft that the carriers couldn't go any lower, and that's the point that carrier Amherst we had, they came in and gave us a 3-year policy, full limits, low deductibles, and said, hey, we're gonna write you a 3-year policy, which is a great deal for y'all, but it was a horrible deal at the end of the day for them, because that year we had Harvey, but it insulated, yeah, and then it insulated us from any increases in our rates for 2 years after Harvey.
Oh, they're getting it back though.
I don't,
No, probably not,
You
but.
wanna think that, and then you start with the stuff I hear and I read through the markets. I mean, Florida is a complete disaster right now. There are insurance companies going under every day right now, and to the point that their state pool, like our TWIA, it's called Citizens over there, doesn't know how they're going to bring in that much more capacity from those carriers that are going belly up right now, and they got a problem. I mean, there's people right now. We have some partner agencies over there, and they have their homeowners carriers that are losing their AM Best ratings, which means they're going broke at this point. And they're like, we don't have anywhere to even move them at this point. I mean, they're just gonna have to ride it out and hope for the best. There's no availability with other markets right now. So
Well, Cheryl, the finance, I think all of us are gonna probably reflect on how we manage our own households, give them the money up front and maybe use it or put it in the savings and hope you don't have to use it. Would we do that same method if we paid the lesser premium, but put we're gonna pay the 17 or the 13, where's the premium? 1,003,3,200. Pay that, but put the difference, like we're paying the higher premium, into the savings, which would be $300,000 that we would have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, pretend like we're taking option one, but take option two, pay less premium overall, but put what we would have paid if we put one, the difference into a savings, a pot to meet the deductible. Could we do that? Instead of putting the premium up front, put the difference of the two into savings and use that as the reserve for paying the deductible. And hope we never use it. And then if we do that year after year, 332,000 adds up to 600 and 900, and hopefully we can have,
I think you could always put it back in the fund balance, but the problem with the
Right.
fund balance is you use it for other things that pop up. So that's for, that's you getting, I think getting a problem with that, because that is like your savings account you put it into, and as we figured out that that things happen and you have to use things from your fund balance, and therefore
could we doggy ear it to that deductible of the, instead of paying the higher premium, pay the lower premium, but use the difference as if we were paying the higher premium. And hope we never have to use it, and but it can build if it takes 3-5 years before we ever need it. That could be a pretty pot.
The difference is 379,542.
Of the premiums.
Right, the difference in premium between option 1 and 2, and
I'm saying,
you're suggesting putting that
use
into
two, but
reserve it.
pretend like we used one and instead of putting it on the table and losing it, put it in a savings and hope we never need it, is my concept to that.
So we would budget the 1.7 million, and of that, 1.3
Pay
would
out
be
1.3
the actual
million,
annual
right.
premium, and the other 379,000 would go into like an insurance reserve.
Towards the deductible when we needed it.
Well, the issue is that this is already built into this budget, because we have to project, it's like most of our budget that we unfortunately have to do. So this comes due during a budget year. So what we did in the budget, last year it was just a little over 1 million. And so we put in the budget 1.2, is that correct, Cheryl?
Yes.
Oh,
We
okay.
figured in that it would be 5 to 10%.
So we're already short.
Where we are, so we built in the budget 1.2, trying to project where we would land.
Right.
So.
Got
there
pretty
is
close.
I mean, all we have is 1.2.
Okay.
So you make your decision and you do 1.3, we've gotta find $100,000 in a budget that's already tight.
Got
to
it.
do. So there is no,
I got it.
I would love it if.
Yeah,
that was
if
the
we were
case.
projecting for next year, that would be,
And we'll project again, and when we build the new budget, we will
okay.
go up again.
I see what you mean.
And, we'll try to project out and hope that we land close, which I'm glad that it's.
Not too
there
far
is an
off.
option that is close to what we budgeted,
Okay, got it.
so. That was a great idea. If the money was there.
Right.
So option 3 is within our budget,
Right.
still at the 5% named storm. However, our loss limit is 10 million less. We're
Correct.
currently at 35 million. It would drop to 25 million.
Correct.
With Hurricane Harvey, our total bill for, it was originally 20 million. And then that was based on those values of replacement values. So now that our values have increased, I'm not really sure. 25 million, I mean, it's a gamble.
Right.
One thing though, regardless, whatever the deductible is for like option 2 or 3, what they would do, you're saying that they would just deduct that from what they do pay us. So we would be actually 5 million, I'm gonna round it up to 5 million. With a deductible, we would have like $20 million to rebuild and repair.
On the 25 million
I'm
option?
using the very far left one because
Option
that
3.
one's
Third.
catching my eye
No.
because it's within our
It's
budget.
affordable.
So, So let's just say we had a $25 million loss, right? And we've got a $5 million deductible. The 5 million will not be deducted from the 25 million. So you could have, realistically, you could have a $30 million loss as a better example, and they're going to deduct 5 and pay you the 25 because it doesn't, the deductible does not erode that loss limit. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yes, it just says that, it just means the policy's never gonna pay more than 25. You could have $80 million of damage
Your
and a
own damage.
$5.2 million deductible, and they're gonna cut you a check for 25 million. The
Okay.
deductible just eats part of it, cause you could have had, you know, and it's better example in the $30 million or the 25 where, you know.
I have a question. I noticed in the terms and conditions,
Nobody reads those.
that's where all the juicy stuff is always at. That it said losses resulting from water damage are excluded at AC Blunt Middle School, which could be amended after a satisfactory inspection. So how does that affect us? Because I know during Harvey, that was a big issue for a lot of people, was certain damage was considered flood/water damage, even though it wasn't necessarily from a regular person's standpoint, it wasn't necessarily how that damage happened, but that's how it was classified for insurance
Yeah,
purposes.
I apologize, I don't recall, I've just got so many going on right now, but that is a result of an inspection that was probably done on that facility. Are there roofing issues or something there?
It's got a new roof on it from Harvey. The whole school actually is a new school. They pretty much rebuilt it.
I'm gonna check on that, because if that's accurate, that's probably not supposed to be in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And really what the water damage, we think of flood, because that's what we think in hurricanes, really what they're gonna be referencing is water intrusion through roofs or windows or floorings or something like that, is what they're gonna try to exclude, because it had some issues with the roof or something in inspection. But that may be a typo that's been in there for a few years.
Okay.
And, yeah. I'm gonna check
Okay,
on that.
I just wanted to ask
Yeah,
because I know
good catch.
all of our premiums are going up,
Yep.
and if the coverage isn't going to actually cover that campus,
Yeah.
then
That's probably a good time to throw another curveball at you
boy.
about flood insurance. So flood insurance, we do have flood insurance built into the policy. And we have the last few years when we got the Amherst policy. However, this year, they have changed our flood deductible, and I'm looking on the first page of this proposal here. It's on the back of that first page. If you look at this top section here, if you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth line item down there where it says property flood not zone A and B, everything's in a flood zone, as we're aware. The A and B zone are the high hazardous zones, and we'd have run some flood zones. I don't recall if we had any in there or not, but I don't believe we did. But really, the issue I was bringing up is on the far right in the deductible column. So last year it said
Excuse me.
we had a $100,000 deductible per occurrence, subject to items in zone B and C, I believe it was, or also maximum of NFIP. NFIP is the National Flood Insurance Program that's administered through FEMA, where most of us probably buy our flood insurance on our homes. And what that meant was in those specific zones that we had to either purchase an NFIP policy up to the maximum limits, which is $500,000 on a building and $500,000 on contents, and then we still had a $100,000 deductible. Or if you didn't purchase it, you basically have $1 million deductible from the NFIP portion you didn't buy, plus 100, so you had a $1.1 million deductible. This year, they're saying all zones are applicable to that. So what we are in the process of doing is, again, like I said, running all the flood zones and pricing out all the flood for every building so that we can analyze and see what the cost would be to purchase those, because that is another major change in the policy this year. And like I said, if we don't buy those policies, we're going to have that huge deductible.
So basically, all zones are flood zones now, regardless?
Well, everything has always been in a flood zone. It just depicts which flood zone you're in, right? So there's B, C, X shaded, A, and V. B being the less hazardous flood zone, with A and V being basically like Port Aransas is
High
in
risk.
all A, and then if you're on the beach, it's a V zone, it's a velocity zone. Y'all are not in any A and B zones that I'm aware of, but again, we were checking that. quoting the flood insurance through NFIP to buy you those maximum limits that are being required, and then the district can elect whether or not to purchase those, or we're going to have the $1.1 million deductible.
Do we have any projections on any of those numbers of what that?
Well, that's what I was just thinking about, and I can't remember if Crystal's done that or not yet. Let me check.
And that's separate from this premium that we're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. Now, those aren't like, it's not going to be 2, 3, 4, 500,000 or something like that, but it could very well on a district this size be 20 to 30,000.
Okay, well, that's still budgeted if we go with 3, right, Cheryl? If we go with section, or
Looks
option
like it,
3.
yes.
We budgeted for 1.2, is that what y'all said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cutting it close.
I'll text her and ask her and see what she says.
If it's 40,000, we'd be at 1.186 to add the flood.
Y'all did some good
Insurance.
calculations.
How much flooding did we have? Do you remember in Harvey?
In the school district,
Mhm.
all of our damage was due on roofs where the
Yeah.
Air
where the
conditions.
air conditioners
wasn't
got pulled
flood.
off and water poured
Yeah.
in.
So that's not considered flood though. But we didn't have accumulation of water in parking lots and streets that came in any school buildings.
Didn't we have some at
Maybe
Keyburger
Keyburger.
campus?
I don't think it's Keyburg. I think the high school had something back when the NGRTC is in that lower stop part. Yeah, I thought there was some flooding.
During the construction,
Mm-hmm.
during the construction, when they were building the new gym,
Oh, and
the
it
water
was,
came into the
Yeah.
new gym, and we had the bubble,
mm-hmm.
and that was due to construction.
But I thought there was something since if you look at the NGRTC facility, this high school sits here, and that room back there, they got their, it's lower. You got to come down a little incline to get in there. From the hallway out, the classrooms down that wing.
The gym, old gym meets the new gym?
No, the NGLTC part, the behind, on the side of the high school, that room's in the back by the parking lot back there. I thought they had some water water on the floor every once in a while back there for something. I just remember seeing some,
And in the library, we had some water issues
mm-hmm.
under the library. I don't
And
really
they-
understand what
So
happened
that
with
came
that.
through the foundation.
Yeah, it was a foundational issue, but that's quite possible. I don't remember.
So would that, like the cracks in the foundation where the rainwater just kind of oozed in, would that have been a flood?
I don't, how'd that
I
happen?
don't think it was considered a flood.
Cracks in the foundation.
From water accumulating off the ground, or it just moisture seeped through there?
I think, well, it was a heavy rain.
So, okay, possibly, yeah, possibly.
Library's in the middle of the building, so that
Yeah, I
really
mean,
doesn't
possibly.
make a
It's
lot-
Lower.
through. I mean, it's below everybody else.
Yeah,
a
so it's
sub-
already underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. But again, when we get that schedule, and I apologize, I can't remember if Crystal's done that yet or not, but we're working on it. It'll have the premium associated for every single building that we quote on there, and it's something, you don't have to purchase all of them, right? I mean, we can look at it and go, okay, well, we know we have flooding issues in the area where Blunt is or whatever, and maybe we purchase a policy there and here, but we know we don't have an issue here, so we don't need one here. You're picking and choosing, but at the end of the day, I mean, most people have lived here long enough, you're probably familiar with where the flooding issues are and where they're not.
Wayne probably knows.
Of course, 30, 40 inches is a little bit different than a springtime rain or something like that, but.
You're going to have those numbers to us by Monday night?
It should be done already. If not, they will be done very quickly. And I can, however you guys want to do it, we can add another line item to this options page that shows the flood costs, or we can put it separately or whatever. But again, knowing that you don't have to buy all those, you can pick and choose which ones you want to do. I don't know who wants to be in charge of that, but
I'd recommend you ask someone that like Wayne or someone that's been,
Elgarius.
yeah, who walked through it all and saw initially, that would make some recommendations for us, because I know they were doing, the maintenance man was the one, and he's no longer with us, but he had a list.
Charlie's not here anymore?
I'm sorry?
Charlie, is he still here?
Mm-mm.
We have a new
Yeah,
director.
Charlie would have been the one,
Yeah.
but I think Wayne and him were,
He was there too.
they were side by side, yeah.
Is it possible to get the total and then break it down by campus?
Sure.
That's what he's saying. You
Yeah.
can-
Okay.
Yeah, we'll give you the total, and then, like I said, on this, like those two last pages, which is what we refer to as your property schedule, we just go in at the end and add another column at the end, and we'll put what the flood premium is for each
Oh,
building
okay.
that's on that schedule.
Okay.
Can you explain number 18 to me under the terms and conditions as well? I'm just, I want to make sure that I understand what they're saying as we're.
Yeah, sure. So that's standard exclusion and insurance policy. Basically, what they're trying to say is it's not going to cover any damage that are directly, indirectly caused by a named storm that's in existence at the time.
Oh, okay.
Not
Like
applicable
if
to
it
you
was
guys, but if we were to renew our insurance in July and there's a storm sitting out there, they're going to say, hey,
Gotcha.
it's little, you've probably heard of this, TWIA has a cutoff rate too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or they're not going to cover any pre-existing damage that may be caused by one that came through in July and we're trying to renew our insurance in September.
Gotcha.
Right.
Perfect.
Yes, but that's why we renew y'all's insurance in March instead of September, because we're not in hurricane season.
And what is an ARCRD?
On
That is
14?
a cosmetic roof damage restriction. So again, part of this market, they're not going to pay to replace your roof if it is cosmetically damaged. So usually we refer to this on like metal buildings or metal roofs where you have hail come through and it puts little dents in the roof, but the integrity of the roof has not been compromised. They're not going to pay for that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You have a district that just doesn't get it?
You know, it's funny you asked me that. Kingsville asked me that this afternoon. They go, do you have anybody that just says, we're tired of it, we're not going to buy insurance anymore? And I said, not yet, but it's coming. It's coming. I mean, it's, like I told them at Kingsville today, I said, if you would have told me we'd be looking at these kind of numbers right now, I would have told you you're crazy back in December. I was thinking, okay, we've had 25, 30% rate increases the last 3 or 4 years in a row. Now everybody should be where they think they're profitable, right? And then all of a sudden this starts coming out in January and February, and we're like, goodness gracious. I mean, at what point is this going to blow up?
Right.
I mean, you can't have another increase like this next year. I don't know how you're going to deal with it this year. You know, it's ridiculous. And it's not just schools. I mean, it's the private industry too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people buy these condos and stuff like that as rental income and all that kind of stuff. Between taxes and insurance now, you can't make any money doing that stuff.
Right.
Hotels. I mean, frame hotels like Holiday Inns and stuff like that. We've got a very large book, a business of hospitality with hotels like that in it. They're getting slaughtered right now. Because again, they're sticks
Well, are
that they don't want to insure.
recommending different material and different standards of building to where
Sure, I mean,
they're-
the best thing you can build is a building like this that's solid cinder block and concrete walls, right? No wood studs and stuff like that. But I mean, you drive around and see new hotels being built. It costs too much to build those like that, so they don't. They build them out of frame, and then they burn to the ground when they catch on fire. You know, it's or they blow away.
But our buildings are all pretty,
Y'all's are, yeah.
it's our roofs
And
that,
after Hurricane Harvey, they did mitigation things, like.
right.
Like all the air conditioners are now put on some kind of a base. It's
Sure.
been a long time, I don't know what you call it, but.
Racks.
So there's, hopefully if we got another Harvey, things would withstand
Better.
the wind a little bit better.
Yeah, because I remember that was y'all's issue. We lost the rooftop units, and so then we had a big hole in the building basically for it to rain in.
Yeah. And there's 3 and 4 of them on one roof
Sure.
in one school district.
Large openings.
That's detrimental.
Or 30, like at Blunt.
Okay. Well, good thing is we can afford, Something.
A policy.
Kind of.
See, there, see, now that's
Kind
what I was
of.
blessing. At least we could afford
We can
something.
afford something.
As long as we don't need to pay
We
the
budgeted-
deductible.
You budgeted enough,
Yeah,
so,
as long as we don't have to use the deductible, we should be okay.
yeah. So we've already talked about that worst-case scenario, so.
Well, I guess this is, if you have any more questions, or this is if you ponder between now and Monday night, but we'll need to make a decision on Monday night.
The policy and, okay.
Correct.
Well,
I
thank
have a
you for your
quick
time.
question. One quick
Sure.
question.
No problem.
Because we're moving into this bundled, more bundled than usual style, are we seeing a lot of confidence in these particular companies? with
What do you
standing
mean by
systems?
bundled
Just with a stacking
of different
with
insurance
all the
carriers?
different insurance.
Yeah, so one of the things we do is the first thing we check is their AM Best rating to make sure that they're A+ carriers so that they're financially sound according to AM Best. And we do monitor that. We have reports that come out if they lose their rating and go to a B rating or something like that. We do notify the clients and try to move at that time. So, yeah, I mean, it's always a concern with anything you put your money in, but at the end of the day, right now they're financially sound. I'm gonna put it that way per
Yes,
their AM
that was
Best
my
rating.
question,
Yeah.
because a lot of them are getting bought out
Yeah.
and they're having a lot of changeover. We've had several policies that, I don't even know who have the policies at this point, but, that's what I was asking,
Yeah,
just so.
and the
if we
good
see
part about being
changes.
with more than one though is we're spreading it a little bit, so nobody's on the hook for $35 million,
Yeah.
right? That's also on every district around you at the time. The problem, like in Harvey, everybody around us was with AmRisc at that time, so they paid out a bucket load of money.
Ms. Cook, make sure we get a copy of this folder, a couple for the two board members that aren't here, so they have that information for Monday's meetings.
I'll send it, everything in the packet to you electronically and you can share it.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's available for them to cruise and look at at their leisure, so
Sure.
let me have some additional questions.
Have like 4 board meetings on Monday night too, by the way, so we did address this. I might have to be virtual here, if that's
Fine,
okay.
as long as can add that last list, like you said, for the
Flood. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's gonna help us.
Yeah, but if we
And then
can,
with
I
your
can talk to you about
information
that,
from
if we can
when-
do some type of virtual setup, that way I can virtually be everywhere, in case there's any questions that come up. It's not because I don't want to be here, by the way.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Yes,
your
ma'am.
time.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, the time is now
So you get to go home, or you?
7:16 p.m. And with no other business before the board, I adjourn this meeting,
Okay,
this
thank you.
workshop.